Welcome, everyone. Today we have Monica Richardson joining us. How are you, Monica?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. How are
It-
you?
I'm very good. It's amazing to have Monica join us. I've been looking forward to having her come on and share her expertise. Monica has created an award-winning documentary about the predatory people in AA, and it's called The 13th Step, the film, and it's been watched all over the world. So the film focuses on how when a violent offender gets court ordered to AA meetings instead of jail, which is just astonishing. We'll have to discuss that. And a murder occurs and an investigation ensues for 4 years. So this case, along with Monica's investigation, really opens up a can of worms with hundreds of people coming forward, revealing the truth of their experiences and their complaints with AA. This issue is really close to home for us here in Australia as well, because we had a group that was started in Victoria as a supposed support for survivors of SRA and MK Ultra mind control. And what ensued in this Zoom group and community meetings included coercion, information gathering, manipulation, sexual advances. The list is just too long to even cover in whole, but included things like bringing a white rabbit to meetings with people that are victims of mind control, supporters having sex in the same room and then almost on top of a survivor of horrific lifelong sexual abuse and trafficking. I
Mm.
just think those people should just be absolutely ashamed of their actions. There was constant reports of swinging, sexual
Mm.
innuendo, and it just seemed to be such a focus on sex, which is so concerning for a group that was meant to set up to support, these survivors of trafficking.
Right.
There are also some direct Freemason connections with the sponsor whose idea it was to start this service, actually being married to a Freemason. And we know that the Freemasons are a cult that's involved in the networks of trafficking children, and it's really rife both through our police and our court system, which orders so many of their, I guess, people that are being charged to go to AA as well.
Yeah.
And AA itself, which I found really interesting when I was trying to research and find out what was going on in this group, was actually founded back in 1935 by Bill Wilson and Bob Smith. And Wilson turns out to be a high level 33-degree Mason. And it was actually financed by the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
So we have, the AA Big Book being a product of Aleister Crowley, who was a really evil occultist. And his branch of Thelema was
Wow.
called Argentinium Astrum. So that's the AA right there. And it was basically a magical organization dedicated to advancing humanity and the perfection of the individual on every plane, blah, 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 using initiations of Buddhism and yoga and ceremonial magic. So all the kind of things that we don't want survivors around. And it promoted spiritual enlightenment through the Kabbalah tree, which we know is used during survivors' mind control programming. So
Mm.
I kind of come into contact with AA as I had to counsel a number of survivors who were completely unstable after having their mind control programs activated when they left this group. They received so much victimization and abuse, and it was basically implying that there was a problem with them
Mm-hmm.
leaving and not the group, which I learned through Monica's documentary is such a common thing as well. Survivors were being called out saying, oh, that person's going back to the cult, etc., or going back to the network, when in truth, they were really escaping from a cult set up in AA itself.
Mm.
So I would love to hear, Monica, just I guess how you come across AA and got involved in being an activist, speaking out about these, horrific occurrences, because it's so hidden. Like I had no idea that, this was common. I kind of thought, oh my God, this must be a one-off with these survivors. Like it's horrific. There was swinging and
Yeah.
all sorts of mind control. And the more I've looked into it, it just seems to be a story repeated all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, I went to AA myself. I didn't go there. I met a bunch of people on the beach in Hawaii when I was turning 18 and short of it. And I had just quit drinking on my own. And I thought I was not joining anything. So I thought I met some people. And then the one guy who kind of, he was 12 stepping me. He knew what he was doing. I didn't know that he was 12 stepping me, but that's, and 12 stepping is like, I'm going to, proselytize, and I'm going to tell you how great my life is now because I don't drink. And then you're going to join. But that's the whole mind, screwing that goes on with AA. I just thought I met a group of people, and I met him, and then I met others, and other things ensued. Like this other guy started hitting on me. I went on a date. I got involved. Like literally the next day, I had not yet gone to a meeting, but they were all in AA, and they were young people, and I had like already quit. But so I got involved with this guy, and then like quickly 2 weeks later, he said, "I want nothing to do with you. I'm kind of going to give you the Reader's Digest
Yeah,
version
yeah.
of the beginning." And then I kind of like lost it and was so upset with how he treated me that I started to dive into the book. I was like, "Oh, what did I do?" And they were like, "Well, now it's time maybe to work the steps." And I had gone to a few meetings and I still didn't join anything. I said, "Well, is there a membership card I should have? Do I need to sign something?" And they're like, "No, you're just, and so it was this kind of, just come, welcome all. And, there are no dues or fees. We are like what the thing that they read, is just absolute horse crap. But I was in a small meeting in Kailua, which is a small little town on the windward side of Oahu, a long way from my hometown of New York City. And my guard was down and I was very vulnerable. I was living with my father and and his new wife. And yeah. So it begins that I get involved, but I still think I'm very free as I'm being brainwashed. I
Wow.
thought this is my choice. And I got such a great high from being sober,
Wow.
completely no drinking. And I had this euphoric, but they were really mean. So there's a lot of, when I went to New York and went to meetings, they were like, "Oh, you're on a pink cloud. Don't worry, that'll be gone soon." And I was like, wow, what kind of people are you? I thought you were spiritual people. So I went to New York. I proselytized all my friends, and they were not interested in AA. And I get back to Hawaii, and I was there. I got involved. I was preyed on sexually by older men, by groups of men, wanting to have group sex with me and others.
Oh my God.
Um, at 19, I really almost, I was very suicidal. And thank God there was an older woman. So I was 19 then, and celebrated a year sober. It wasn't very thrilling. It was awful. It was no excitement. But I stayed because I really didn't know anything else. But an older woman said, "These young people are not good, Monica. Stay away from them."
Wow.
And an older Hawaiian woman kind of heard about what was going on the windward side, and she came and she kind of wanted to mother me. She was a Hawaiian woman, and she did. She sponsored me and mothered me and kept me from killing myself. And I got involved with them as like a family. It was like a big ohana. So I was sort of disenfranchised from my family, even though my father was there. And I loved not drinking and
Wow.
not smoking pot. I had already quit smoking pot on my own. So you kind of, now we go through decades, and I'm sitting at a meeting in Culver City, which is part of West Los Angeles. And this young girl, raises her hand, and it's a small meeting, 50, 40 women, and talks about, she's sobbing about this guy who moved in with her and who won't get out. And she was like 90 days and he has 9 years. And she tells the story how he kept asking, "Do you want to ride? Do you want to ride?" And then she said, "No, no." And then he like makes his way up into her apartment, and then he's like still there. Like, I mean,
Oh my
so,
God.
and this is
Stalking.
really kind of how it happened. So this is like 2009, I guess. Like, yeah, it must be like 2009. And I talked to her, and she said, "You don't know what's going on in these mixed meetings." I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "There's so many predators. Women are being raped, and it's just not just sexual harassment." And I was like, "What?" And so I started going to like local meetings in Culver City, West LA, and it was just disgusting. So then, really, when it gets huge, is I call a friend who once ran New York AA. He was the general service manager, like the president, and he, they make good money, $200,000 or $300,000 a year. And he said to me, "Oh, you need to call." Oh my God, I'm going to forget his name now. But anyway, he had written a letter to the board in 2008 7-page letter about children being molested, about women being raped, about unsafe practices in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the board made him wait a year to read the letter of his, like, oh my God, we have to do something about safety, you know, for women and men and gay people. Pretty bad in that community too, the sexual predation. So he sends me the letter. I read it and I'm sobbing, and I go to my group and we have a meeting. We saying something must be done. You know, we're like all
Yeah.
like we were so clueless in our little insulated, nice meeting with nice women.
Yeah.
And so what happens is there's a murder in Honolulu, and I have friends in Honolulu, and they're like, Monica. Well, actually, I was over there, and they said, Monica, there's been this murder that's AA related, just like what you're the safety stuff, you know, you're working on. I'm like, what? A murder, you know? And so they're like, yeah, this guy was court ordered and he murdered her, Christine Cass and Sandra Cass, her 13-year-old daughter, murdered her in 2010 in the summer. And I just went, oh my God. And that's when it just like clicked, and I created a safety workshops, and I had workshops all over here. And the more I did to, like, you know, kind of open, shine the light, they went crazy here, that like to shut us down. Like they were like,
Oh.
yeah, like I was like, wait a second. I mean, wouldn't you want to just make it safe for people? And
Yeah,
okay,
that would
so
be a normal response, right? Like, it's not
yeah.
even like they were, oh, I can't believe this is happening in a meeting. They're just trying to silence you.
So
Gee.
that's when I found out that they were court ordering violent offenders. And then I found out sex offenders have been court ordered to AA since the 70s. It was a place to just dump them. Even though the woman I interviewed, who had a horrible experience, she had a father who was a pedophile. She said he was court ordered in the 70s. But pedophiles don't drink like that because it interferes with what they're going to do. And so it was real. And the domestic violence that goes on with, they all get out of that with the AA card. So this is a huge piece that I mean, I saw this film called Domestic Violence at Sundance one year. And I was like, nobody sees the connection that domestic violence guys, they go the AA route. They say, just say you have a drinking problem, say you have a drinking problem. And a lot of them might, you know, because they're ragers, but not
Yeah.
all of them do. It was such a rabbit hole, Gabbi, that I couldn't believe it. And yeah, so even people said, just stay focused on the sexual predation, Monica. Just like when I had people, I asked them for advice. I said, oh, I got to make a film. What am I going to do? You know, this is bigger than Monica making pamphlets.
Amazing. It's so amazing that you come across, something that was just so wrong and took action and, got that awareness out there. And, now we're speaking from, across the world. And I just think, it takes people like you that, you noticed it, you saw it, and you did something about it. So well done. And just what you were saying before, like, your experience with them from the start, it seems so similar to the stories I've heard. Like, it's 1 minute they're nice, and then 1 minute it's just so evil, and they're rude, they're controlling. Just seems to
Yeah.
be like so much trauma bonding going on there. So like you kind of are like tied in, and you feel, people start getting insecure because it's always put back on the person that, is either saying that there's something wrong or trying to leave AA. It's like, well, it's not
Yeah.
us that are the problem. It must be you, like you're not committed, or you're not following this, or you're not reading the steps often enough, etc. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
just incredible. Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love.
Go ahead.
No, no, what were you gonna say?
Well, you know, as you were talking, I was remembering this thing that happened when I was 7 months sober. So there would be these spin-off groups in small, like private homes or in apartments. And this one was above the Lantern Chop Suey on Kapahulu on a Saturday night, the candlelight meeting, Gabbi. Guess what's going on in the
Oh
candlelight
my
meetings, right?
God.
But anyway, this one was really bad. So there was
Dang.
a woman. I mean, it's a crazy dynamics. There was this older woman. She wanted to have sex with this younger guy who really was predatory towards me and lots of other young women. So it wasn't going to happen between them, but she was so mean to me. And they're like, well, maybe let's do some confrontation therapy. It's called like Gestalt or something, where you scream and you confront people. Like it's right out of those awful, like, this rehab that was down here in the 70s where that crazy guy, I forget his name, oh man, was it Narcanon or well, anyway, this really abusive uh, rehab for addicts. It was mostly geared towards addicts, and they would just. He took Gestalt therapy to a whole level where they were screaming and yelling, and that did it to me. They did it to me and anybody else who. I was 19, and that guy was probably he was 7 years older than me, and she was in her 40s, and we sat around in this BS group. It was so traumatizing. I mean, it was. I thought I was going to snap, and I was strong, but really disgusting, and to not be happy when somebody is young and happily quitting. I don't even like to use the word sober, like sometimes I can, but I'm still triggered with the word.
Yeah.
But they would say to me, if you can't take, I would say, I can't say I'm powerless because I'm not powerless. And they'd say, well, then if you can't take that first half of the first step, you can't get the program. I said, I have the what do you mean the program? What program? I said, I'm sober. Like, I don't want to drink. What are you talking about? So there's like a mind
control, isn't it?
control.
It's a real
Yeah. I like
aspect.
to swear. I still like to swear when I say it, but I'm going to not do it for your channel or whatever.
It's
But
quite okay. Look, we're in Australia, so swearing is very accepted here. So if you get passionate
okay.
and swear, don't drop it. We will totally
Okay.
be fine with that. I was
I got
actually reading some books about AA when I was trying to work out what was going on before I found you and your documentary. And Dr. Lance Dodds, he wrote The Sober Truth and really debunked the bad science. And I know you've spoken about this in some interviews as well, and went through and just debunked this whole 12-step program and the rehab industry, which, what you were saying before about these yelling matches and stuff, especially when people are victims of domestic violence and a lot of other abuse, which is why they have an addiction. How unhelpful is that? But
right.
Lance found that, he went through 50 studies and the actual success rate from AA was like 5 to 10%. That is even worse than like a placebo drug to pass, in big pharma is like at least, I think, 25 or 30 to scrape through.
Right.
AA
Right.
isn't even there. And
No.
if you look at how people, stop drinking, and this is kind of, I think they give people the choice of you either drink or you just completely stop, which is
Yeah.
not really what most people end up doing. Most people learn to gain control and, drink responsibly occasionally, and they don't have to say I'm sober.
Right.
Most people actually, like the great majority of people that, get control over alcohol and, stop that addiction, actually do it themselves. So it's just such, we're so brainwashed. Even I've never been to an AA meeting, but I've been so brainwashed about how good AA is. And, it sends people that are drink drivers in Australia to meetings, which, that sounds like a good thing to do. But those people are also really vulnerable to the mind control because of where they're at, etc. And, just to hear what you're saying about people that are offenders. So we're not talking about, speeding offenders or etc. It's domestic violence, pedophiles, rapists getting sent into meetings. And the thing I was shocked with in your documentary is the people in the meetings have no idea that this person they're sitting next to is a violent offender.
Yep.
And they're just getting out of it, like you said, getting out of a court sentence by saying, I've got an alcohol problem. Like, how awful.
Yeah, like Carla's mother had incredible data. So Carla Brada's murder was here in Los Angeles, and I went to that murder trial. He got 25 years to life, but in California, we have really terrible governor, and people have been letting people out, sooner. But I pray to God that he doesn't. But she had the stack of how many times he was arrested and how many times he was sent to AA over like 23 years or, some insane amount of times. And then when her daughter went and she went to a rehab, which was a house. Okay, this is like the rehab industry needs really, renovation badly. Maybe we could have a new show called Renovation Rehab for television where, oh, you have a 7-bedroom house where there's 4 mattresses on the floor and all they're getting is AA, I kid you not, and then Anthem Blue Cross and all, they're all paying $28,000 a month. And then she gets bused in a van to a ministry that's nearby where there's a lot of offenders. And that's where she meets Eric Earl. But the problem is that there are even some, I have a friend who was wealthy who went to a rehab that she thought was good, and she was sitting in groups with criminals, like hard criminals. So it's the government has been, paying the bill. Okay, go there, or you can go there. So I was horrified by this, and a lot of good people that are in AA, because there are get so insulated by going to their nice little meeting that they've been going to for years, where you just talk about what's going on in the week and hi and get the hug. Okay, see you later, whatever. But wow, but you go out to that mixed meeting and it can be gnarly, or in the clubhouses. And I mean, the thing that we started to really want to stop is the court ordering. But listen to this. So I wanted to talk to judges. So we think, okay, let's just send letter to the judges, right?
Yeah, why not?
Isn't that easy? So a friend takes me to an event where there's 400 judges and lawyers at this event, where they have panels and a luncheon, whatever. Okay, it's a 2-day event. So somebody says, oh, you see that guy over there? You should go talk to him, Monica. He's at the head of the criminal courthouse downtown. I said, okay. And I have my little film on CD and like my little card. And I walk up to him and he looks at me, looks at my card, and he said, get away from me. He said, I know all about you. Get away from me. I'm
He
not
knew
interested.
about you already.
Well,
Wow.
because they were suing. So I think the reason he knew was Carla's parents were suing AA in that courthourse.
Wow.
I'm sure he was a stepper. And it just was like, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? I just went, he goes, no. And he kept like, it's a big guy. He's like 6'4", like 280 pounds. And like, so I called my lawyer who was clearing the film. He said, stay away from them. He said, we'll go another route. Judges can be really nasty.
Wow.
It was so disheartening, but I was like, okay, time to go a different direction.
It is. It's incredibly disheartening, isn't it? When you just think, oh, I've found this problem out in society. Surely people will want to know about it and do something about it. And then you get out there being an activist in an area and you find, no, it's not really by accident at all. These are the way, this is why it's been this way for so long, with judges refusing to look at what they're doing. And that's still happening today, isn't it? That offenders are being sent into.
Yes.
Wow. I'm
Course.
not sure if that's the case here in Australia. I know drink drivers definitely are, but I wouldn't be surprised. It would make absolute sense because our court systems are so similar to yours there in the US that we'd have violent offenders in meetings.
Yeah, it was interesting when I first started the work. I was still in AA. AA in Australia had a big safety, like a 2-page pamphlet. So they had addressed as a country sexual predatory behavior in Australia. Maybe I could find the PDF of it, and because I don't think it's still up, but it was up then, warning people about safety and don't just trust everybody. It was pretty good. And I called them and they didn't want to be interviewed, but
wow.
yeah, it's a big problem.
It was interesting watching in your documentary as well how, the older members, or I shouldn't say older because that's a bit ageist, but the people that had been in AA for longer kind of, drew almost a rank over these new people coming in. They were like, I've been here for 10 or 20 years, or I'm a sponsor, I've been sober for this long, as if they have, some experience or knowledge to give these younger people. And yet, they were actually preying on the younger people. That I know in your documentary there was this young woman that was talking about how she just kind of got coerced to a degree into having a tea with someone after a meeting and then was sexually assaulted and drugged. And I was just like, that is just heartbreaking. So I would love for you to explain, just what the whole 13th step lingo is, with AA as well, because how disturbing is it that they actually have a term for this predation as well? Like, I think that just goes to show how common it is.
Yeah. So 13th step is when an older member hits on a newer member for sex. And women do it too. There are women, and it's a lot of men because AA is kind of men heavy in their population. It's kind of on the, but so it's when somebody preys on a younger person and uses them for sex. But very often it's like, well, let's go and read the big book, at my house. And in honey, people are lonely, people are very isolated. Maybe the family is isolating them and thrown them away, or the wife said you better get sober, the husband says you better get sober, the parents, you can't come back here unless you straighten up. And then, I mean, one of the guys that was in the group, he was probably similar to my age at the time, so maybe he was in his 50s. And he came up privately and told me how he was 13. His wife was really angry at him, and she 13 stepped him when he had 30 days, and he was a mess. He was like a regular dude, a regular white collar job. And, here it goes. And she was like, it's like the cougar chick. And so people are very vulnerable when they go, and yeah, so that's what it is. And sometimes too, it's about money. Like with the young woman who came to our group, he didn't have a job. And she had 2 jobs. Like, she went back to work. So he was living at her place 9 years sober, no job. He wouldn't get a job. And she's like now working 2 jobs. She worked in accounting and at Starbucks.
Oh
So
my
yeah, it's
God.
not funny. I don't know why I'm, laughing. It's ridiculous.
Have to almost, don't you? Because it's unbelievable that this is going on in
Yeah.
such a large organization. It's not just a community group. This is an
Yeah.
international organization. And
Where famous people are pushing it, like Elton John and Anthony Hopkins. And then when Brad Pitt went, Brad Pitt was forced to go
hey,
there.
I didn't know that.
Oh,
Oh,
it's so disgusting. I was such a fan, and I don't dislike him now, but it's, the agencies, all the agencies will push people to go. So if you have trouble, the DFS says, I think it's Department of Family Services, and your spouse calls on you, and they're like, they all send them to AA, or not in every state though. I've had people give me feedback. There is some change. Probation, people get out, they serve their time, and they're like, oh, well, you had an addiction because you sold drugs, so now you need to go to AA. The guy was like, I did my time. I did 10 years. I did 25 years. No, you need to go to a rehab, and you still need. I was like, what is wrong with the system? And I want to address the people with a lot of time. The further you get back from being in there, it's almost like, yeah, I got a master's degree. I got like 35 years. And, I know, like, they're like so full of it. They're so full of shit. And they are so like condescending and arrogant. And it got worse over the years. It really has. The stories I hear now, I'm gone 11 years, the way sponsors are treating people, the gaslighting, and that word is overused, but it's called verbal abuse, psychological abuse. You're going to ice you out. There's, words for cults when you leave religions where, what's that name, where you got the whole family's shunning,
yeah.
shunning.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing is that Hollywood it's almost got worse. Like after my film came out, I swear to God, my film and CBS 48 Hours, all these TV shows started to make threads about, like, Lip in Shameless. This whole thread about AA that didn't exist in the original show in England. He doesn't go to AA. Nobody goes to AA, And in Fallen, that thing with Denzel Washington on the plane, you think, okay, maybe something's going to change here. It's not going to be an AA ending. And there he is in prison. And he's like, then he goes to a meeting. And I'm like, oh God, when is this going to stop?
So really they're finding ways to promote it. Do you know what I mean? Even with, like, Brad Pitt, like you said, being out in the media and it being known that he went to AA. It's such a, like, people think that is the way that you would deal with an alcohol addiction, because it's just so brainwashed over society, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the things I was really surprised of when I was kind of trying to work out what happened with this survivor group in Australia is the people that are running these groups, they have absolutely no qualifications. We had trauma survivors of the most severe trauma of, trafficking, of MK Ultra mind control. Wow. They weren't sitting with counselors or anyone that could support them if they got into any trouble. They were sitting with people that, had been in AA for years and were now sober and were now completely brainwashed into the AA institution. And I just find it shocking to think that these huge groups all over the world are running and there's no real support. Like, there's no counselors there if people get into trouble. There's no psychologist. Like, what did you find anything more about that when you were researching? Because I just can't believe it can actually operate, even with like the violent offenders. Is there security there? Is there, like, someone?
Are you kidding?
Some,
No. And let's
yeah.
offend the bad guys saying, well, it says right here in our book, that everybody's welcome. All is welcome. We can't throw out anybody. So, and Gabrielle Glaser, who wrote the book, Her Best Kept Secret, she wrote this book that she went in very innocently of what do you do if you have a drinking problem? And so she got the contract with Simon and Schuster, and they gave her the money to go do the investigation, write this story. And she thought that AA was run by like a professional, like
Yeah,
a
I would have
counselor, right?
too. I really
I
would
was
have
like,
as well.
when she told me that, I was like, are you kidding? And in the news, like sometimes the reporting would be, the AA leaders. And I was like, guys, like, no, there is no professional, there is no counselor that's running any of these meetings. Like I sound like I do in my film. Like, it's like, where does this come from? Where does it come from? It comes from Hollywood. It comes from Hollywood, makes TV shows and they make movies where they show a guy, like, which one is it? It wasn't Shameless, but it was a really violent. It wasn't Breaking Bad either. Well, maybe it was Breaking Bad, but there was one where it was the FBI agent. So they're sitting around in a group. I put it in the film where the guy is acting like he's a counselor. Well, it's so
Yeah.
full of shit. It's so misrepresenting. And even Shameless, when they did it, though, so they had fake steps. It wasn't even the steps. Now, at least which one was good was Goliath. Goliath, that was on Amazon with oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, but he went into a meeting and he let him have it. He goes, "You guys sit here, week after week, you say the same stuff," and he gets up and leaves, and it doesn't help him. And he finally just drinks less and less and less over all the seasons. Billy Bob Thornton, yeah, his character was like true. So I don't know. Did I cover that? I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. It's
uh,
just isn't it incredible just how much AA is appearing in pop culture? Like really,
yeah.
like in all these movies, etc. And I found it shocking, like in your documentary when you go into the AA headquarters, how
Mm.
they've got the actual symbol, like the circle with the triangle within it stuck up on the wall, which is Illuminati. I'm like, they're not even like they're trying
Oh,
to
is it really? Yeah.
yeah, they're not even trying to hide that they're saying we're mind controlling you. It's like, yeah, this is our logo. You're being mind controlled.
Wow. I
Unbelievable.
didn't even know that, because they were trying to what is it when you want to own like that piece,
The
you
triangle. Oh, because I've
yeah,
seen it on rings as well, that symbol with
yeah,
AA.
but they couldn't do
Yeah.
it. The guy who I knew ran there said they wanted a lot of money for that to be for them to own it so that no one else could use it. So they really don't own it, but everybody sees it. They think, oh, that's AA. There's a car. Oh, that's an AA member or whatever. Ah, barf.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I know, I mean, you must speak to so many people that are
It's
leaving, that have left AA and basically had
yeah.
an awful experience. Like, what sort of advice would you give someone that is sitting in AA and is kind of realizing that things are not okay, which I think your documentary and, this conversation and these things going out publicly are so important because hopefully people will see this and maybe start questioning the meetings a little bit more that they're in. What sort of
Yes.
advice would you give someone that's sitting in a meeting thinking this isn't right for me? How do I get out? Because there is a lot of pressure put on people. When they
Right.
start saying, I don't know about this, or I disagree with this idea, or this isn't good for me, they're kind of told that they're the problem, that the system's perfect.
Yeah.
It causes a lot of guilt. Like, I mean, and that's the mind control, like that's the real cultish behavior. So yeah, I'd love to
Like,
hear what you would suggest.
yeah, like they're told that they're going to die. They're so the cliche saying is you're going to die, drink, or go insane, and you're not going to be okay. Oh, you'll be back, or but it's happening all the time. So there's some 5,000 members in the two groups leaving AA and deprogramming from AA or any 12-step group in Facebook. And I don't even promote it. Like, it's just been sort of word of mouth. But here's what I'd say. Some people are more brainwashed than others. But what I did, because I was getting ready to leave and people said, look, why don't you make a plan? So people who are really stuck in there, I say make a plan to leave and reduce your meetings, right? Every week you reduce and make your family your priority. because they have told you that AA is your prior, really with 30 years, even 5 years, 3 years, they're not going to drink again. Like that's, and even if you did, like that's a whole nother story. So let's keep on with this. I'll stay focused here, that get up, don't be there for any of the readings. And that's how you start to unravel the brainwashing while you're still sitting at the meetings. So come late, don't hear the preamble. When they're reading the big book, get up and go to the bathroom, go get a cup of coffee. Okay, and then come back down. And then when they're reading the 12 traditions during the break, get up again, go to the bathroom, go get coffee, come back. And in the end, maybe leave for don't stay for the Lord's Prayer or do, and then deal. But what I started to do was, you hear it, you start to, something snaps when you don't listen to it every time you go. And then there's a website called the Orange Papers that might still be out there. I think it is, that you could go read all the truth. But now what's nice is there are people like me, and there's lots of other bloggers that are like, when I left, there was no face that would ever speak badly about AA on the internet. No, nobody. You had the words, and you had music and creepy music trying to, expose it. And there were no books. Like Lance Stode's book wasn't written yet. Gabrielle Glacier's book wasn't written yet. The CBS 48 Hours wasn't out there. So, I mean, I have a closet here full of books that are now, Claudia Christian's book, all the work that she did with the C3 Foundation, with the Sinclair method and using naltrexone. So, you make a plan, but those are the two key things. Don't read that. And then listen to my podcast. So I have a thing called Safe Recovery Blog Talk Radio. You can listen on iTunes. And I have like 250 episodes. You can actually hear me deprogramming from 2011. And I don't do much of that today because I focused more on trying to build a channel and show my face. I said, this time, enough is enough. Like, so that would be, and then see a therapist. So even though I didn't need it, I got to meet these other people from Smart Recovery, from Moderation Management. And we started to, I just said, I wanted to talk to other people. And I read these other books. I went to some Smart Recovery meetings. I went to Moderation Management. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God, look at this good stuff. Why are they so small? Why is all this so small? Why isn't this like sliced bread for everybody? So, I got help, professional help. And then in the activism, I got to meet so many people and talk to them and travel around the country and even to England. Oh my God, London is a shit show. London has so many predators.
With AA, wow.
Yeah, predators, rapists. Yeah, having their fun. Yeah, Scotland. I got people. I have emails from people in Iceland. I've met girls, young women from Iceland at parties here in Hollywood, talking about the 13 steppers. People from South America contacting me. Oh,
Just goes to show it's not accidental that this organization has these behaviors, right? If it's worldwide, it just seems to be something that's promoted within it. Now, I would love to hear, because you speak to so many people that are literally survivors of AA. What sort of mind control, do they pick up that they gained from the organization, and what sort of things are they working through as they leave? Like, it'd just be interesting to know, like, what sort of areas like AA is brainwashing them in, basically.
You're powerless. So the first step is, I'm powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable. The powerless part, a lot of people wake up and go, I'm not powerless. What are you talking about? But also their friends and their community. So many people they cut themselves off from everybody else, all the normies. And, AA has, the normies, they don't know what we know, only we can help you. There is a superiority with a lot of AA members. There's some people that are humble and that they're not that way. But I would say, even though I thought I wasn't, no, I was judgmental. And I thought I didn't think I was superior because I didn't drink all those years. But yeah, I was. Yeah. I thought, look at that willpower, willpower. And so, what really helped? So I was raised Catholic, and I thought, I was sitting in the meeting. This is before I really cracked open, because that's what it felt like. I cracked open. And I thought, well, I was taught about free will in Catholicism. You went to church once a week, and once you became a certain age, your parents said, if you still want to go, you go. And what was sin, but there was no crazy, I have to speak to God, and what is God's will. That's not that kind of church. I know there are
Yes,
some
go to
Christian,
meetings.
yeah, like, why would you be going there 6:30 in the morning to a meeting every day? I don't know. But I said, I have free will. And I began to say that out loud in the meetings. That
Wow.
I don't, God is not, I'm not a slave to a puppet up here that's, a design. I think he's got more problems than what Monica is going to do today. So I think I got off track with that question. You bring
No,
me
no,
back.
that's brilliant. It's just it just seems to be such a disempowering setup. And even like it just strikes me with people at the start of the meeting going around just saying, I'm an
Yeah.
alcoholic. I'm
Yeah.
like, why are they saying something like that's just disempowering, right? Like you're literally saying, I'm a slave to alcohol and I can't, like, I'm going to be stuck in these groups for the rest of my life, because even once I'm sober, I'm meant to continue in these groups for the rest of my life because I'll relapse. I'll stuff it up. I've got to stay, even though I've been
Yeah.
sober for years. I've got to stay. How long are you finding people that courageously leave AA take to deprogram and come back to themselves? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
have a free mind, have free will. Like what's the sort of time length that is for most people?
What I love is the answer for this is so unique. Everybody's
Yeah,
unique. And everybody's in deeper, been there longer. Those of us who are in 30 years, we kind of relate to each other. There's this old timer. Wow, there's a lot of sadness that we spent this time, that we gave this energy to try to proselytize. And I mean, I used to cry all the time when I got interviewed and talked about this. I think I could cry. It's a little bit coming up, but that I felt I wasted so much of my time and my energy and my life. Now, I didn't neglect my children. Like, so I didn't have kids, but once I had my kids, I said, oh, I don't know, I'm not bringing them there, and I can really pull back. And I got into therapy. But I would say that, there is like a year, maybe if you're really in there and someone is really doing some work, that it might take somebody a year. I needed to drink again. I really needed a drink. I wanted to
yeah,
break my time. I wanted to be free of 37 years of complete abstinence, of nothing. And when I say nothing, just no pot, no illegal,
yeah.
no pot was really, and no drinking. And but people can be really brainwashed in a quick amount of time. Like, people will come in with 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, and if all of their friends are in AA, they have to unhook it. Like, you watch people saying, I'm trying to meet new friends, and they might be in their late 20s or 30s. And how will I talk to them? And but in the groups, man, the advice, if I could do a Zoom, everybody won't do this, where I did one where they all would give advice. It would
Wow,
be so powerful, because when I read the comments of people's advice, it's really beautiful. It's
brilliant.
powerful. And I've had people call me, email me. One woman was in a rehab here, and she was in a closet listening to my podcast,
Oh
laughing. And she was like,
wow.
oh my God, there's like a real person out here that understands and knows what I'm going through. And we wound up having coffee and laughing, and became friends. But I think it takes time. I think people who are really having a hard time, we all say, get therapy and be kind to yourself. People are really beating themselves up. People have been, the shaming for sexual abuse. So the worst part, now, no one ever did this to me, thank God. But people are told when they share about being abused as a child or being assaulted, that what was your part in it? It's in the book. Like, it's in the big book where it's
No.
anytime you think there's something wrong, just you better look at yourself. And the key to uh
Oh,
what is it called? That's it. And I got to tell you, The Vow that was on HBO has helped a lot of people leave. Every show that's been on Netflix or Hulu about a cult, we have tons of people. We talk about it. We go, oh my God, did you see this? Isn't it remind you? And people come in, they go, that woke them up, because you know what it was? I was watching that HBO show about the Mormons in Utah that
uh-huh.
was on in the early whatever that was in the 2000s. And I'm sitting there watching. Kevin's in the kitchen, my husband. And I said, Kevin, we're in a cult. And he goes, I said, we're in a cult. Look at this show about the Mormons and the seven wives and they throw the boys out. But it wasn't like the seven wives, but there were things about it. And he laughed. And eventually he followed me out too. So it was good.
But yeah, how great is it that people can see the same themes? I mean, it's scary that you can see the
Yeah.
same themes in like a Mormon cult and AA, but that's why it's so important that this information is going out. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's literally saving lives, the work that you do. There's obviously been people murdered, but I would be scared to think, how many suicides have been caused by what people experience as they leave AA. And that would be completely unrecorded because it's
Yeah.
anonymous. And that's the way that AA is allowed to cover so much of the complaints and the issues that happen with them, because everything's anonymous. People can't get hold of facts and figures and numbers, because I know I've tried. It's really quite difficult.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I don't know anybody who's committed suicide since I left AA. And both Kevin and I know that many people who committed suicide while we were in that community. The
Yeah.
suicide rate, because if it's not working, well, just do it harder, just do it better. Well, maybe you're not of service enough. I said stupid stuff like that, not as punitive as I hear in the groups, but I once said, well, maybe it's because you haven't done enough service. No, that's not the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about. You need help. You need trauma work, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets
I
gets
really,
really
oh my God. I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm so feel so thankful that you found me and that you're just giving me this a platform, another platform to speak out and the work you're doing as well.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I said, like through my research, because I kind of had to work out what was going on for these survivors that were so badly affected. I was just shocked. And when I found your documentary, it literally put so many pieces together for me. I was like, wow, this is happening all over the world. So it's so important. It's so important that people know that it acts like a cult. It was set up as a cult, and
Mhm.
you literally
Mhm.
are in a cult. So, and there's so many better alternatives. Like, why are we running on this system that was made in 1935, thinking that's
Yep.
the best way to treat people that are having issues with alcohol? Like,
Uh, I know. It's like they're finding plant-based medicine, psilocybin journeys with, therapists by their side, trauma work. Like I mentioned with Claudia Christian's work with people who want to drink still to use naltrexone 1 hour before they drink.
yeah,
I mean, in my last video, which I wound up taking it down, I was unhappy with it, but it was kind of like, okay, let's see what happened in 1935 with heart disease. So I have a sister who would be gone. My uncle Nick would have been gone in when he was 40. He lived to be 88. My husband would be long gone. My mother would have been gone 10 years earlier. So medicine and pills and all the research they did with diet and stuff, but it's really the medicines and putting stents in people's hearts and like
technology.
all
Yeah.
right, all that stuff. And AA, really, you're going to give somebody a book from 1935 and tell them to pray on it and turn it over and go sit and talk to an unprofessional. Like when I was dealing with my own childhood abuse, finally I had the Hawaiian lady I was telling you about, Mary,
Yeah.
and I got to this stuff and she didn't say anything bad, but she said, I don't know what to tell you about that, honey. I don't know what. I'm sorry that happened to you. And later I got really good therapy. But I was like 15 years in and I had a child and I was like, oh, I think I better deal with this trauma, and I did. And I was transformed. And you know what the therapist said to me? They said, look, we know you're in AA and a lot of things we're going to tell you are going to be pushing against those beliefs. Are you okay
Wow.
with that? Are you okay with, that you don't have to forgive the predator ever to heal? That's not part of it, Monica. You never have to forgive them to heal. In AA, oh, you have to forgive. Oh, no matter what they do to you, And so I said, sure. I was ready to really heal and change. And yeah, it's powerful.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that happened to you in your childhood. And It's just it's so common for people that are struggling with addictions to actually have some form of childhood trauma or neglect. And like I know with the survivors that I work with, like so many of us have had addictions at times in our lives. And like I would say when I was younger, definitely had issues with alcohol as well. And it becomes a band-aid for the pain, incredible pain that you can't even deal with, and you're not dealing with, you're just pushing it down, or I was anyway. So it's so beautiful to hear that people are getting free from the underlying issues of childhood trauma, but that's not what's happening in AA. And how interesting is that the therapists even know that the real way to healing is in conflict completely with what's going on in meetings.
Yeah. And it was really powerful because I was 15 years sober and I was in my 30s. And when I was in that intense part of the therapy, it was almost like I was spiritual at the time. And I would pray and meditate. And it was like a voice that said, go to a meeting and talk about this. So I would go to a day meeting because I had kids, and it was like I really went to meetings then. And I'd raise my hand, and I used to use the year cards. I am 15 years sober, and I want to tell you something. The steps don't work for this stuff. These were never designed for people who were abused as children. Bill Wilson never meant this to help a kid who was beaten or molested or somebody who was assaulted, man or woman. This was for a 45-year-old dude who's been drinking for 25 years, horrifically, from morning till night, and it has nothing to. So I recommend, if there's any people in here who've been abused, go see a therapist. And then they'd be like, yay! Like, and then people would come up to me, like a couple, some women, will you be my sponsor?
You're like, God, no.
So I was like, well, I have like a little child. I'm not really okay. I sponsored like one at a time or two, and then, but the stories were horrific, like really tragic, and they were always being told garbage. And I was like, no, you need a counselor. I'm going to work with you, but you're going to like, it was all about, it became for me when I did sponsor. I would say I made some mistakes in the end for sure, but I would say I would just use what I learned in therapy. I was just so kind and just try to hear them and told them, well, I did rage work. I did incredible emotional work. And I was a changed woman after it. And then I would go in those meetings and I was like, oh, it was really bad in here. I could pick out all the creeps.
So literally you became a sponsor for people leaving AA. I love it. And then you made a documentary.
Yeah. Somebody posted in the group that somebody's making a group. I don't know, it was in Nevada or maybe New Mexico. It's called Leaving AA, but they want to do it in person. So when you're leaving and you want support, they're actually going to do it in person. It's like, let us know how it goes. I think it's great.
And that's inspiring to other people. Do you know what I mean? If you're sitting there going, I can't get out, if you see and hear of someone doing it, it's like, I can do it. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes such a difference. That's incredible. Just as we finish up, I would love, just for you to share where people can find you, the Facebook groups, and I'll pop your podcast and the actual links in our video description so people can go straight to those and pass them on to anyone that they know it would help. So.
Okay, so I put finally the film up on YouTube for free in December. So it's there for free, the 13 step. And my podcasts are on iTunes. I think it's on a lot of where podcasts are, but you can go directly to Blog Talk Radio Safe Recovery. And those old 9 years of 250 podcasts where you could just listen, you can find that there. The face groups that I have a lot, but the best that to come are deprogramming from AA or any 12-step group. It's kind of long, but we wanted everybody to feel welcome in that group. And then Leaving AA is a group, not the community. Those are the two biggest groups. And then I did make an exposing AA group. If you really feel like you want activism, come in that group. And I think that's it. Oh, and on YouTube, under Monica Richardson, I began to, have some other videos to try to help people and for me to vent that I needed to get the word out, and I wanted to be seen because of the whole anonymous thing. So
yeah, it's so courageous what you're doing, and I applaud you for just taking what could have been such a horrible traumatic experience, you know, that you've obviously grieved over having to get through these issues with AA and the time you've spent there, and you've used all of that to help other people leave. And I just think that's amazing. So thank you so much for all you do, Monica. And I'm sure that this video will help, you know, help other people that are trying to leave, help people try and, you know, that maybe left before and, you know, have some bad thoughts or bad experiences that they've maybe even suppressed because it was so awful. Just help us all heal. And I think, you know, that's such an incredible part of these times is, you know, so there's so many people speaking out about these issues in our communities,
Yeah, yeah.
advocating and getting the truth out. And, you know, thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure meeting you.
Sure.
Thank you for having me on.